Welcome to Leverage to Build Wealth, where we discuss and educate entrepreneurs, mortgage, real estate, and financial service professionals on how to leverage tools and other people's experience to truly leverage to build wealth to create the lifestyle and legacy you desire. Hello, welcome to today's episode of Leverage to Build Wealth. My very special guest today is Mo Daniels. She's an executive coach at 2020 Vision for Success Coaching and Consulting. She's a friend, and I've known her for about 2 years. And I have had the pleasure of numerous different coaching meetings that we've been involved together, where I've observed her firsthand, her ability to not just listen, but to truly pick up what people are putting down on their conversation, and to be able to help draw out the very best in those in who she has the opportunity to help. And so, with that, Mo, can you tell us about your professional background and then more of your story, and we'll use that to springboard into our conversation today.
I appreciate that's a very gracious introduction. I began my career in business, actually in retail banking back in 1981. I graduated on a Friday and I began a full-time job the following Monday. And that journey launched a very fulfilling, challenging, and lucrative banking career. I spent in total about 25 years, and I progressed through organizations that I worked for. And then because of all the changes in banking, there were a lot of mergers and acquisitions, and I went through about just shy of a half a dozen of those. And though there was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of challenge, I rose to the occasion. And the reason why I left that part of the business industry was I saw a shift away from the consumer being at the center to profits. And while I respect capitalism, I respect people's right and desire to earn money and lots of it. What I couldn't stomach was that it came at the expense of integrity and delivering real value to the client or the customer. The other thing that I experienced was I reached certain plateaus. So if you were to look at my resume, you would see that every 3 or 4 years, I would be in a different position. And it wasn't because I was a job hopper per se, but I was always looking for what is the next opportunity that's going to challenge me both personally and professionally. And so when I reached a level of, and I'll use air quotes, mastery in a given area, probably within 12 months of reaching that level, I'd be looking at the horizon within an organization to see where can I grow next. And I was very fortunate in those 25 years to move up, not a straight vertical, but a gradual elevation through the organization. And that allowed me to manage myself, manage teams, manage divisions, and it really allowed me to experience a lot of tremendous personal and that journey. What I realized was that the organization whom I had great affinity for and loyalty to, I realized that our values were diverging. And because of how I was raised and how I choose to live my life, I found it hard to reconcile acquiescing my values for the values of the organization. It wasn't a wholesale disposal of my values, but there was enough of it that was being compromised in my mind's eye that I said, I can't continue on this journey in good faith because I will be dishonoring myself. And at some point, I would be in a place where I might dishonor the people that I work with or my clients. And so at that particular point in time, I had set my sights on a much larger organization, a Fortune 500 company. Ironically enough, happened to be one of my clients.
Mm.
And of course, after we went through the legal um, conflicts of interest, I got a green light to apply and be a candidate for this company. And it really opened up a lot of opportunities for me, not just professionally, but personally. And then towards the end of that journey, so I was in sales and service for a Fortune 500 company for about 10 years. One of my older brothers, the youngest of my older brothers, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And it made me realize that the accolades of being in a certain position and the money associated with it really didn't matter, because none of us are getting out of this life alive, number one. And number two, when you're dealing with a life limiting experience like that, it makes you really reflect on the work that you're choosing, the people you're choosing to spend your time with, where you're putting your efforts. And so, to the credit of that organization, the manager that I worked for was very gracious, very supportive. And he really understood that my attention was going to be on my brother. So essentially, I was my brother's advocate through that 16-month journey. And so I would be taking him to the hospital, to treatments, et cetera, during my workday. And then once that was done, once I got back home, then I'd put in my 7, 8 hours of my corporate work. And I'm not going to lie, it suffered. My heart wasn't in it, because my brother was dying every day in that 16-month journey. But I worked for an incredible manager who was very empathic, very supportive. Ultimately, I left corporate America in an effort to pursue a career in real estate. My mom had been a realtor, my sister was in the business, and I felt that in that season of my life, that would be a good fit based on my personality, based on the fact that my husband and I spend 6 months in New Hampshire and 6 months in Florida. The long and the short of it is, as much time, energy, and resources as I put into that business, I think there was a naivete on my part, because at one point, Tom, I was working my full-time corporate job and doing real estate. And as I was working with clients cumulatively, I was working about 70 hours a week. And I knew that it was not sustainable. And so one of the lessons that I learned was that I made that leap into entrepreneurship too soon, because I did not have enough cash flow, enough leverage in that real estate business. So when I jettisoned the very attractive corporate paycheck, although I had saved a lot of money, probably about 10 months worth of living expenses, with licensing and all these subscriptions, I went through that money like a hot knife through butter.
Yeah, I
And
understand that.
ultimately, what's that?
I definitely understand that.
What I realized was this: in spite of my innate desire to want to help people, and I did, and I served my clients really well. Once that deal was consummated, the reward outside of the commission check was very flat. I didn't feel fulfilled. I felt exhausted. I felt drained. And that's when I realized that, in spite of the fact that I thought I did my due diligence, I thought I did proper business planning, in retrospect, it was not as vigorous as it could have been to make that potential transition more prosperous from a financial perspective. But even if it had played out more favorably economically, I was missing something in here. And so on that real estate journey, I had someone who was associated with 2020 who invited me to a mastermind. And so I showed up, and unfortunately, in spite of the advertising this person did, only not even a handful of people showed up. And Christine Beckwith was the guest. and she was talking about her new book. She was talking about her success as a lender in her very prosperous career in mortgage lending. And that gal was like a house of fire.
Oh,
She
yes.
had an energy, she had a tenacity, she had a language that said, I am in the room and I will wrestle anybody, regardless of their size. And there was just something about her character that spoke to me. It spoke to me about possibility. It spoke to me about adversity and navigating through adversity and getting to the other side. And so, interestingly enough, I had the gift of meeting her that day. I sent her a handwritten note when I just basically said, hey, Christine, I'm so glad I got the chance to meet you. If you're amenable, I'd like to stay in touch because I think you're a really remarkable person. And so that began mine and Christine's journey. That was almost 4 years ago now. And so I had attempted to get back into corporate because my mind was, well, getting that steady paycheck and having benefits is a nice thing. And I was actually offered a position with a privately held company. And then the pandemic hit.
Oh,
And
wow.
so that opportunity was jettisoned. And so I took a couple of part-time jobs just to scrap together some cash to make ends meet. But what drove me back to Christine was her passion, her integrity, her tenacity. And so I saw we're connected on LinkedIn, and I saw her ad that said, hey, we're hiring coaches. So I reached out and I said, hey, I saw your ad. I'd love to have a conversation if you're amenable. Had a conversation, interviewed with the head coach, and that's how I came into 2020. And for me, Tom, it's been such a blessing because it fills me up.
Oh,
When
good.
I can help somebody else, it fills me up. And that's what lights me on fire. And that's, you and I see each other in classes during the month. And I watch the room and I do my best to engage with people. And I've gotten to know you over time. And so when I see people who come in and they seem a little off, that's not meant to be a judgment, but an observation.
Yeah.
Like, is there something else going on? Because this person is normally a bright light and full of energy and vigor, and they're just kind of quiet today. They're kind of sitting back. And sometimes, hey, I'm a lifelong learner. Sometimes I come into a room and I'm more of a stoic. I'm just absorbing, but I'll see things and I'll pick up on things and I'll just reach out privately just to say, hey, I just want to make sure you're okay. And I've done that also too with people that I've connected with on LinkedIn, people whom I engage in their posts and such. And if I see that they haven't posted anything in a while, I'll send them a private message to say, hey, I haven't seen you. Are you okay? And interestingly enough, one of the people that I reached out to had shared in a post without calling me out personally, just said, hey, you know what, this is a platform where B2B people connect, but I had this person who hadn't heard from me in a while and said, hey, are you okay? And how it made them feel. And that made me feel good. And interestingly enough, with that particular platform and my interaction with people, I've established some really lovely friendships with some people, and I've had the benefit of meeting some of them while I winter here in Southwest Florida. And so I've built within that really large community a smaller, more intimate community of like-minded people who are willing to check in on one another to say, hey, is everything okay? How can I help you or support you at this time? And actually, one of the people that I'm friends with is going through a tough time personally right now. He, like myself, has a sibling who has a very aggressive cancer. And so I've been checking in on him just to see how he's going because I understand what that journey feels like. And at the end of the day, Tom, it doesn't matter our socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter what our position is in an organization. We're all human and we all have an innate need to be seen, to be heard, and to be appreciated. And all those things are free. And what you get in return can enrich your life in ways that you cannot even quantify. And so that's what I try to bring in my role as an executive coach at 2020, but also I'm also in a role in the organization as the executive director of services. So trying to make sure that when people come in, whether they're brand new or they've been here a while, that we have a pulse on where they're at, where their business is at. You know, can we recommend a class? Can we recommend a coach? Can we simply just extend a kind word or an outreach that says, hey, I was thinking about you today and I hope you're okay? Because it's so easy to get caught up in this vortex of busyness that we don't see or acknowledge the suffering and the challenges that people are going through.
Thank you very much for everything you shared. There's a lot to unpack there, and I have a few items that really keyed into me that I'd like to explore. And
Sure.
thank you very much. Uh, it's interesting. The premise of this whole podcast, YouTube channel is leverage to build wealth, and
Mhm.
wealth is so much more than just economic principles, economic tools, and strategies, although those are very important to have their proper place. And this channel does address those, and will address more in different other kind of trainings and seminars and webinars that we do. Um, I'm a big believer that the foundation of all true wealth is your mindset, because
Yeah.
your mindset will make or break you, and I
Yeah.
have seen rich poor people, and I
Mhm.
have seen poor wealthy people.
Yes.
And it's interesting is your mindset has nothing to do with your finances, but your finances have a way of magnifying who you are, both to the good and to the bad. Stress has
Mhm.
that way of magnifying cracks. It doesn't
Mhm.
create cracks, it magnifies them.
Mhm.
And I also feel that it magnifies your true integrity. And you
Mhm.
mentioned a couple things that are really important in your early corporate career, and how some companies, um, for their bottom line, gravitate to the profit and forget the mission.
Mhm.
Sometimes their mission is just the commission.
Mhm.
And one of the things that kind of that stood out to me is people over profits.
Mhm.
A big believer that they're not mutually exclusive.
Mhm.
Many people think that you have to choose one or the other. I believe
Mhm.
there is absolutely no way I will do business unless we can have both. Um,
Yeah.
quite a while back, I made a concerted decision, let's say 23 years ago, that unless it is a win, 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 win for me, win for my client, win for the overall situation, I will not pursue it. and
Mhm.
and that has cost me much money, but I have
Mhm.
gained more and more fulfilling relationships and interactions. And ironically, the stats are better by having that philosophy. And I've told
Yeah.
clients, I'm like, hey, if this is not a win-win-win, I think it's best that we all walk away or revisit how we go about this. And
Mhm.
I have found that more people are in tune to that, and
Mhm.
hey, let's just the surface level. And
Mhm.
and a lot of people are like, wow, this seems kind of woo-woo, kind of stuff. But for me, it's actually crucial. I'm a
Yeah.
big believer in the power of mindset. I'm a believer.
Mhm.
I'm a believer that there is more to our purposes in life than just surviving and collecting money and shoring that up. But I
Mhm.
believe that wealth comes in many forms. And
Mm.
I believe that as we live a life full of purpose,
Mhm.
intently, we can have more fulfillment, more wealth, more opportunities. And and I'm a big believer as well. I heard this the other day from a mentor of mine, Bryce Peterson. He said, "You cannot lift someone up higher than your level of achievement, and that achievement comes in many forms.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do, and
Mhm.
you have to grow emotionally, psychologically, um, uh, security wise, to be able to help others feel confident that you can help them. And
Mhm.
I've done this. Follow me. I can help you. And you brought up some points about sticking to your integrity
Mhm.
and choosing. And I really love that. I've had similar experiences like that really resonates with me. There really comes a point when you realize what's for sale.
Mhm.
Am I a commodity? That's interesting.
Mhm.
As business, you can say that. You can structure ways, you can look at your ROI, you can look at all these
Mhm.
matrix and all these performance measures and you especially understand, I mean, there's a lot of matrices that 2020 has a way of evaluating things both with leading and lagging indicators and forecasting
Sure.
growth and troubleshooting down to the interesting minutia of where to surgically make adjustments that can have exponential results. Uh, but this isn't that conversation. The
Mhm.
conversation about what are you willing to stand for? Where do you draw your line in the sand? And that really stands out to me. And I think that plays to your strength for those who have the pleasure and privilege to be able to be in a room with you whenever you're facilitating or leading a conversation. You have this natural ability, and there's for those who are familiar with the phrase empath, it makes total sense. And I'm not talking about just empathy, but someone who is an
Mhm.
empath. You know,
Mhm.
uh, those of us who are an empath immediately recognize other empaths. It's just
Yeah.
we glow in a way that um, is intuitive to others who have
Mhm.
that same skill set, talent, gift from God or the universe, however they may want to label it. The result is the same. You recognize others in a room.
Mhm.
And you are definitely an incredible, powerful empath person. Not only
I
are you
appreciate that.
magnetic, but you can go into a room. And for those who this will resonate with others, both those who it's connected for them, but others who have been impacted. And let me walk through a scenario. Okay. You walk into a room and you can feel the energy in the room. And I'm
Mhm.
not talking about just the excitement energy. Like if you go to a concert or you know, a room full of family that you're excited to see. I'm not talking about that emotion. I'm talking about when you come in and you can feel the emotions that are not seen.
Mhm.
You have an ability to literally work the room and say, wow, there
Mhm.
is something here. Um, and to be able to kind of gravitate to certain type of individuals. Now, what's interesting is with this, we tend to typically be more sensitive to certain type of personalities. Like there are some that can come into a room, and I've mentioned this before with some other conversations with on the channel where some can come into the room and it just electrifies the room. The
Yeah.
temperature seems to change. It
Yeah.
just the morale, the excitement. You mentioned this in talking about Christine.
Mhm.
Christine is a force to be reckoned with.
Yes.
And she is a very powerful personality,
Yes.
and with a lot of opinions and perspectives and grit and reasons behind that force of nature, and that ability to
project power in different ways. And it lights up a room,
Mhm.
makes the room better, exponentially better.
Mhm.
You have that same trait. And
I
we've also
appreciate that.
yeah, well, it's definitely well earned. But then we also see the counter where others, regardless of what success that may appear to have monetarily or professionally or whatever, they come into the room and it sucks energy right out. You're just like,
Mhm.
wow, they can be like a walking cancer. They
Yeah.
can be the person that comes in and you just know that they are a force divider, not a force multiplier. They
Mm.
are ironically great empaths. They're called a dark empath. Even on WebMD, when you're talking about different aspects, uh, even the medical profession has a subcategory where they talk about them. Like, hey, we don't have an official one, but there's been a lot of uh, testing and evaluations and so forth. We're able to kind of like recognize different kind of aspects, and they talk about different aspects of empaths. And I want to mention this a little bit because it ties into what I view as one of your great strengths and how you are able to extrapolate the best in others. And I think this is a very important trait for those in leadership positions to really key into and recognize that performance has more to do with how someone can connect with others than just the bottom line. And so there is a point to this. There's the intuitive empath. This is where, someone's just their intuition. Stuff just doesn't smell right, the
Right.
BS radar goes off.
Yeah.
Flags go
Yeah.
off. This one is my strength. I'm more of the
Yeah.
intuitive. There's the emotional empath. This is the not only do I feel, but I almost take on the feelings of the other person. This isn't my biggest strength. As a matter of fact, my wife is critical of this one. She goes, well, it's good that you know, whereas my
Yeah.
wife is kind of like that. But I'm more the intuitive, but the emotional one since to take on almost like an avatar,
Mhm.
the emotional state of what's going on. And that has its pros and cons. There's the
It
physical
does.
empath. This is really actually great with those in the physical sports arena,
Mm.
or in the physical sciences, medical field, those who have these traits seem to excel in those areas. And so they actually naturally gravitate towards that, because it's amazing how we
Mhm.
kind of gravitate naturally to where these strengths are applied in our life.
Right.
And then there's a dark empath. Dark empath is basically the person who uses these insights for negative, for
Mhm.
negative gain, and I do
Mhm.
believe that there is positive gain. So I'm not a big believer that, because someone gains, someone loses. I don't subscribe to the zero sum philosophy, although zero
Mhm.
sum in math is sometimes, applicable, and sometimes there's a scenario where, there is a loser and a winner. I definitely
Mhm.
understand that. But a dark empath is their intent and purpose is to manipulate. They do
Mhm.
have the strengths, they can recognize, but they feed on others in a way to consume, not to build.
Mm.
And those I think are why some people who have that intuitive empath can recognize those others, and it's almost like a war, because it's
Yeah.
almost like Star Wars. Though I love Star Wars, it's almost like the good side, the dark,
Yeah.
and you recognize because you have the strength, same similar kind of powers and abilities to bring out things in others, but what's the intent behind it? And
Mhm.
uh, the reason why I share this and why it's important is because great leaders understand how to properly position other people into leadership opportunities or trainer like opportunities, coaching like opportunities, because they recognize that whether or not that person is as an individual a top performer,
Mhm.
okay, maybe their best ability is actually bringing out the best in others. Some of the
Mhm.
best coaches weren't great players, but they understand with their perspective and intuition and ability to be able to navigate the way how to make others incredible. You
Mhm.
know? And I see this in our sessions whenever we're doing coaching with 2020 Vision for Success. You have a way to be able to help tap into others. Let's talk about that. And from a business standpoint, how can they use this without getting to a point where it may seem manipulative, negative, hurtful, or too personal? Because some people, they may have an emotional guard and say, hey, this is too far. This is I'm not comfortable with whatever. How
Mhm.
can a company or a professional understand how to tap into this more to have better relationships with their clients, their team, so they can perform better? How would you say from your perspective? And you have a pretty lofty perspective. You work with a large variety of different brokers and financial professionals and bankers. You have a tremendous amount of experience in this, uh, as not just an observer, but as a doer.
Mhm.
Can you take the floor on that? Take the wheel and talk about how others can leverage this for good.
Well, I'll be candid. I struggle with the word leverage in this context, but
Yeah.
I'm going to roll with it. I think what I've seen in my own journey, in my early years of management, there was this initiative or paradigm, and it
How about this?
almost
Let
off.
me take a step back. Leverage, not in the aspect of using
Okay.
someone else. Okay, so let's before we go down this road, let's define what I mean by leverage.
Okay.
Leverage,
Fair.
not in the aspect of using something or someone in a
Okay.
negative connotation. For me, it's not a negative connotation. It is how can
Mhm.
you magnify through scale? How can you
Mhm.
magnify through conversation?
Mhm.
How can you magnify something and utilize resources to make more of than just trying to do it your own? And
Hmm.
so, uh, and I appreciate the fact that what you didn't say, about leverage, because I'm picking up on that as well. I'm not talking about leverage and using something negative. No, it's a force multiplier. That's exactly what leverage is. It's a multiplier of strength. And
No,
so
I appreciate that
yeah,
clarification. And
let's use
for the
that.
record, I I have a very high opinion of you and know that that would not align with your values.
Thank you.
My husband would tell you I can be very concrete, and there's a lot of truth to that. It's perhaps that word triggered what I saw early in my journey
Mhm.
in management and executive leadership, and that was power over versus, collective power. And what I saw, and I experienced this as a manager. We would do annual reviews. Here's what you did well. Here are your strengths. Here are your weaknesses. And there was this inordinate struggle and initiative to strengthen someone's weaknesses. And while I wouldn't give it a wholesale jettison of that idea, I think there's more to be gained by focusing on and elevating people's strengths.
Absolutely.
At one point in my journey, I had incredible acumen in finance. So being able to read balance sheets and being able to tease out, what someone's liquidity was and things of that nature. As I moved in the organization and away from that, kind of forensic analysis, well, I had some atrophy there. However, as my career progressed and as I continued to be involved in leadership positions, I personally made that shift. Not a failure to recognize where people aren't performing well, but can we guide their journey? Can we give them more work and more involvement in where they thrive. Because when people are thriving and we're leveraging their strengths for the betterment of themselves professionally, personally, organizationally, I think that the cascading effects on the bottom line with clients and customers alike, there's a lot of upside there. And so I specifically approached working with my team in that regard. I did get some pushback from my executives above me who would say things like, you know what your problem is, Mo? And I'd say, no, but I have an idea that you're going to tell me what my problem is. And and I got feedback like, you
Oh.
care too much about your people.
Mm. Mm.
And I said, well, thank you for that feedback. That's good to know. Here's the thing. When you
But
interviewed
here's
me and you
but they use that in a negative way. That wasn't a
right,
compliment. We received it as a compliment, but it's meant to be a slap in the face. It's
it
ironic,
was,
so
it
you're like,
was
well,
ironic.
but sorry for
Yeah.
interrupting. Continue.
Oh, no, 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 it's all good. And I just said, here's the thing, pal. I won't use a person's name. You interviewed me 4 times for this job. You knew who you were hiring. I have stayed true to that persona. That's who I am. That's what I embody. And I'm sorry that you feel that I care too much, but that is not going to change. Because if I care about the well-being of the people that work for me, guess what? The clients and the profits will take care of themselves.
Yes, amen.
And so that was not an easy conversation to have. And actually, Tom, within 6 weeks of that conversation that I had been solicited by this Fortune 500 company for a sales position, and I took it because I had many of the roles I had a component of sales. I had always aspired to be in a sales position one day. And so the opportunity presented itself. And I knew with that conversation and within the climate, the culture of that organization, that my level of servant leadership was not only not wanted, it was not going to go very far outside of my small team. And I said, well, I can buck the system. I can rebel and rebel. That's a lot of resistance. And look, I'm not the kind of person that just, cuts the line and runs. But at the same time, I wasn't going to dilute my values
Yes.
because this person didn't think that the people under the organizational stewardship were worth that kind of care and concern. And so I
To that
think
point, real
what,
quick, to that
yeah,
point, I want to address that because that's really
mhm,
important. Because at some point, I'm like, do you have the power and the capacity and capability of changing the culture? If you don't, all you're doing is hurting yourself. You're hurting your opportunities. You're hurting all the people who have the opportunity to work with you. And so it's interesting is because that's tied to the company culture, not just that person, because that person was promoted within a cultural context that is what was valued. And it's interesting is the underlining aspect of those reviews is, hey, we want to heavily weight. Like when you look at the minutia of those type of reviews, it's like a slap sandwich, is just like, hey, we're going to slap you here, but you do really good here. Then we're going to slap you again. And the reason why they do that is to plant seeds of, oh, well, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve XYZ. And
mhm,
ironically, it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy.
it does.
If you emphasize the weaknesses, the person feels devalued. They accept what crumbs the overlords provide to them.
Yeah.
And they're like, thank you, sir. Can I have some more? Like Oliver Twist. And the dynamics of the business relationship is they're this grateful giver, and you should be lucky to be part of an organization to get the crumbs.
Mhm.
Unlike the kind of culture that you were just talking about of what you wanted to be able to have, and the culture that you embody, which is, hey, let's talk about your strengths. Now, I'm a big believer in um there's no true balance. I really don't believe in balance. I do believe there's integration and ways that you can do things, but now the idea of a well-balanced life is very attractive, but I realize that in some aspects of strengths, it's you just have to supplement it with something else.
Correct.
And so
Mhm.
professionally, is if someone's going gangbusters on this, as long as they're not doing something that causes problems, negative, ill, you supplement what their weaknesses are
Mhm.
and say, hey, maybe that person is great at communicating, connecting with people, but maybe they're horrible with paperwork. Instead of focusing them on trainings over and over and over again about what they hate and despise and what they're great at, provide a processor that
Mhm.
their personality and says, okay,
Right.
I get what you're saying. This is what I know I need to do.
Mhm.
Versus from an administrative leadership position of saying, hey, we're going to grind this training into this person and they're going to be a great processor.
Yeah.
If you teach a lion how to be a giraffe, it's not going to end well. It's just,
Mhm.
it was Albert Einstein, I think, it talked about, the different animals of intelligence. And if if
Yeah,
you,
I'm not familiar with that. I'll have
yeah,
to look it up.
it's really interesting. You play to their strengths and what their natural abilities are. Um,
Yeah.
but continue. We got about 10 more minutes left, and so please continue that thought and then we'll wrap up.
I think I think the shift from trying to shore up or strengthen people's weaknesses, that doesn't give people a free pass to not improve, to not grow, and to cherry pick
Yeah.
aspects of their job. However, as you mentioned the word integration, what I've seen has worked is if someone is really capable in a specific area, let's say financial analytics, then and another person and they're not so great at customer service or business development. Well, is there someone else within the team that is better at business development that you could just do some shifting?
Yes.
And again, I'm not playing into, oh, I don't like to do that, so I don't
Yeah.
want to do it. No, I don't subscribe to that. Give people an opportunity. And if they show you where their true gifts are, I think if you can focus their energies, their attention, and their talent in that area, you're going to see higher rates of job satisfaction, personal fulfillment. You'll see lower rates of attrition. Uh, and I think, again, I firmly believe because I've seen this, it has cascading benefits to profitability and the client experience. And I think the other thing that I've learned, because I grew up in the business world under the command and control model,
Mm.
and that never set well with me. I did fall in line, but I realized it was misaligned for who I am as a person.
Yes.
And so I put my own spin on it. I let the people above me think I was, command and control, but the people who worked with me knew I was collaborative and that I was going to do whatever I could to help them be successful. Thankfully, I think there's been more of a shift towards trying to align people's true gifts and talents in areas where they can produce more, be more productive, not just with outputs, but feeling better about how they're coming into work, how they're showing up, how they're contributing. I think the other thing too, and I've witnessed this firsthand in some corporate meetings, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. And what I've learned is that if we listen twice as much as we speak, you can learn a lot, not just about what's being said, but to the point you made earlier about what isn't being said.
Yes.
And when we're really attentive with our listening, I think it allows us to sharpen our senses to pay attention to nonverbal cues. Like, for example, that company where the manager said I cared too much about my people. I had a team of about 23 technicians, and they were across 7 states. And I worked with this team every day. I had seen some folks who had a lot of promise, who had innate leadership abilities. And in order for me to do my job better, I needed people who could help me in that leadership capacity. So I met with them individually and said, hey, this is what I'm thinking. I'm looking for a team lead for this area. There is no additional compensation. It's an opportunity for you to grow. It's an opportunity for you to help your team, and it's an opportunity for you to potentially to have some visibility internally, so that if you want some kind of upward mobility, then you're going to have some additional visibility. And I had 3 of these gentlemen without any additional pay say, yep, I'll be a team lead. And so they led their team each week in a weekly call. They helped provide resources. They helped troubleshoot. They helped support. Now, I left that organization about 6 weeks after that conversation, and I stayed in touch with some of them for a period of time. And, they were very kind and said, Mo, it hasn't been the same since you left. And that might have been, just something nice to say. But what I recognized was how they conducted themselves. They sat up a little straighter in
Yes.
meetings. I would be in the field with them while they're working with clients, and they were articulate, they were collaborative, and that model that these folks stepped into these leadership positions without any additional compensation, no change in job title, but they saw an opportunity that they had personally and professionally. And I applauded the fact that they were willing to do that in a selfless way. And I think that sometimes in leadership, we can get creative. We can't always give people the pay increase or the title. However, we can create opportunities for them to step into their possibilities and their potential. And I think that that's what's important. And if you aren't paying attention, and if you aren't creating opportunities for conversations with people to tease out really what they want out of their job, what they want out of life, I can't tell you how many people don't know much, if anything, about the people that work for them. They don't know if they have families, if they have kids, if they have dogs, if they have hobbies, if they have passions. And I think that's a very inexpensive and easy gateway to learn more about people. And then through those conversations, you can either create or make available to them opportunities for them to leverage those skills, even though they haven't been necessarily refined, but giving them an opportunity to step into a place where they can really potentially reach higher levels of accountability and capacity, and find untapped talent and potential.
I definitely subscribe to that. That philosophy I think is crucial, and sometimes that's what helps bring someone purpose, because purpose has nothing to do with the dollar sign. Someone may,
Right.
they may be feeling stagnant. They're like, man, I don't feel appreciated. I can't stand this place. Or, the cultures don't align. And in that intuitive aspect, can truly find ways to help people. Now, I also believe on that same token, that sometimes this provides an opportunity for someone to have a real come to reality moment that they may be the right person in the wrong career. They might be
Yes.
the right person in the wrong job. Now, I'm not talking about firing people. I'm talking about inviting people to live their purpose.
Mhm.
And I'll use this example. We'll use this to wrap up a little bit. I forget the name of the book, but it was a Navy SEAL who the author was also really good with martial arts and so forth. And him and his best friend, they wanted to be Navy SEALs together. And literally like the first day of Navy SEAL training, his best friend's like, nope, I'm done. I don't want to do this. Rings the bell. And the guy's like, what are you
Mhm.
doing, bro? We've been wanting to do this for the longest time. He's like, this isn't my goal. I don't really want to do this. And he goes like, what are you talking about? We got through all this stuff to try to get to this point. And he's like,
Mhm.
no, this is your goal. I just wanted to be with you and support you. And he's like, well, what is it you want to do? And he's like, I think I want to be a chef. I bring this point up is because switching careers, switching opportunities does not have to be a negative thing. And sometimes being a great leader is recognizing, now, ideally, you find this out in the interview process, but
Right.
sometimes people don't figure it out for themselves. They need
Hmm.
different things to agitate them in a positive way or negative way that happens in their life that brings forth a circumstance in their life where they're like, you know what, something is comes to the head where they're like, this isn't what my purpose is.
Right.
And the reason why I have situated my firm um, and in my business model about doing things, like why I'm in personal finance, is not for the commissions, although it's a very lucrative career. I'm a big
Hmm.
believer that, and the facts support this. I mean, the number one stress for people is tied to financial circumstances, you know,
Hmm.
and it's the number one driver of that agitation. I'm a big believer
Hmm.
if I can help people in my way of to be able to help them alleviate those stresses, whether it's saving them money, helping them build wealth, whatever, the strategic plans of how to remove that negative stress, then that cloud can disappear, ideally, to where they
Hmm.
can see more clearly how to pursue their life's passion, their goals, their mission in life. My mission is to try to help them live their mission. And
Yes.
and that is the underlining core philosophies of my firm. And now it's manifested outwardly through financial discussions and the psychological discussions in what they like and what they don't like in recognizing their personal business model, their
Mhm.
personal mindset model, and then
Sure.
crafting a specific solution for that so they
Hmm.
can live their best version of what they feel that is. And I feel if I'm doing that, I'm doing God's work, you know, uh,
Hmm.
like uh, God cares about someone's portfolio. I really don't think that that's an attribute. I don't think the universe cares. Whatever label you want
Hmm.
to put out there, I don't think it cares
Hmm.
about how a portfolio is positioned. But I do believe how someone's energy and how their mindset and how they direct their thoughts has a direct impact on those outcomes. And if I can help people with that, just like you're talking about, um,
Hmm.
and this is just my way of manifesting my mission, to be able to help others, then they can have a happier life. And sometimes in leadership, that's what you need to do. Whether it's within your organization or you're inviting them with opportunities to explore elsewhere where they can be their very best. Because are you helping them and helping your organization if you keep the right person in the wrong position? Are you really helping each other? The answer is an empathetic no.
Yes.
And part of the compassion and true leadership and empathetic part is keying into that. And sometimes leaders don't just have that. They just have the business mindset. And that's where leveraging great people like yourself and coaching and specific resources that you have can help people recognize that for themselves. And so with that, I'd like you to get the final thought. And please tell people how they can reach you directly if they want to work with you directly, and how to reach, with 2020, whatever services that you may provide, that people may say, hey, you know what? I really like Mo. I want to work with her.
Sure. Well, of course, I'm going to plug 2020 Vision for Success coaching. You can go to 2020visionyoursuccess.net/coaches. We have various memberships. Some provide one-on-one coaching. And then I also have a LinkedIn page under Maureen Mo Daniels, and you could direct message me there. Um, As far as what you're saying, Tom, I agree wholeheartedly. Money can be a stressor for a lot of people, and it can keep people in positions that are not helpful to them, both professionally and personally. And I think I applaud the work that you're doing in this area to help people with that, because what I've seen in my journey is a shift away from financial literacy to a very high percentage of adults and young people are financially illiterate.
Yes.
It's a big problem, but it is not an unsolvable problem. It just requires an interest and a commitment to learning more, because I think once we can take control over our finances, regardless of how significant or how Spartan they are, we feel like we have a better say in the choices that we make, and the decisions that we make every day with the monies and the resources that we have at our disposal. So I appreciate the fact that you're taking this on and helping people in that area.
Thank you. Well, Mo, it has been a tremendous pleasure. I do count you
Right
as a
back at
friend.
you, Tom.
And
Yeah, thank you. And I'm
um,
sorry, I have no idea what happened. I'm probably going to have to, do some kind of debugging with my computer, but I appreciate your patience.
hey, well, you're wonderful. And it's just a hiccup. It's no big deal.
Yeah.
Well, without reservation, I recommend Mo and her services, an incredible company with 2020 visions for success. Christine Beckwith being at the helm. Anyone who wants to take advantage of such an incredible organization, I do. I always recognize the need to have tremendous coaches. They see what you don't. They've been there. They know where you need to go, and they know how to properly give you the individual attention that you need. Mo, it's been a tremendous pleasure. This is one that people can watch many times over and get something differently each time. It's been a pleasure.
Yes.
Have a wonderful day.
Right back at you. You too. Thanks, Tom. See ya.
Thank you for watching and listening in to today's episode. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can strengthen our mission and get the message out to others on how to leverage to build wealth. Who's next?